Now, the more I'm studying the subject, the more my belief system is now coming to the point of accepting, embracing the idea that Maui, the ancestors of Maui, the ancestors of the Polynesians, that there were three different races. That's why I think Polynesian is called Polynesia for a reason. There were actually three different races that entered Oceania, entered Polynesia. And for example, this is the Maori version of Maui, of the red hair white people.
Some
right?
insight to these questions came from epigraphic researcher Barry Fell when he deciphered some ancient petroglyphs on Pitcairn Island which told of damage done to one of
Here's the question. Why do we have the writings, the drawings of Egyptians within Polynesia? Has anyone ever answered the question when we, Polynesian, from recent history, we do not have written language? So, no doubt that these people, whoever it is, Maui, descendants of Maui, were very light-skinned people who originated from Egypt and who have traveled into Siberia, into, the Americas, and they were not the first to be in Polynesia. I think the black people were there first, but they did eventually enter Polynesia.
His ships in a storm.
So
He also
here's the
deciphered
writing.
petroglyphs found in a cave called Casa Pintada in the San Fernando Valley in Chile. These were written in Libyan script declaring that Maui claimed 4,000 miles of the Central and South American coastline for Egypt in 231 BC. Fell was perplexed
So here we got all the theories about it.
that
Just
a
putting it all
Polynesian
together, right?
Maui and sailed south for
So
4,000
here
miles
we have
along
all
the
the
coast.
navigation.
It seems he made quite a name for himself in Tonga, where there's a massive stone archway named
So here we
after
have-
him. It is called Ha'amonga a Maui, the burden of Maui.
So here is where Maui's resting place was, Tonga. And this is where you find also the kingship of Polynesia within where Tonga.
The Tongans remember him as a navigator of high esteem and still retain a copy of his star chart to this day.
Now we will just carry on.
Further proof of Maui's expedition came from a cave in Irian Jaya called the Cave of
this.
the Navigators, where Barry Fell deciphered images that
Yeah,
told
look.
of Maui's visit.
Maui.
This clearly shows that Maui passed through the islands of eastern Indonesia, reprovisioning his ships in the home of the Indonesian rice paddy rat.
So it could be possible that Maui or the ancestors of Maui went as far as Indonesia, and there you do find a lot of the Egyptian, the pyramids that you find within the Americas, in Polynesia, in Indonesia, and in Egypt or the Middle East. And
Is probably, or is the most famous of all our guides.
this
She
is
was
this is the
basically
Maori
what you
point
call a
of view, right?
puhi ariki, which
Yeah.
means very chiefly woman. Anyway, she wrote a book called The Old Time Māori, and it's probably the best reference
I
for
might read that book.
what went on in the old days anyway. And it was funny to hear because when I read it, it's like she mentions Waka blondes, you know? You get the word blondes because of a family in here that are all fair-skinned and all blonde-haired.
Did you hear that?
She mentioned in this book that her best friend,
This is what I'm trying to say. If you find a connection, if you find it in Tahiti, if you hear the story in Samoa, in Tonga, in New Zealand, that every Polynesian speak of these light-skinned, blonde, blue-eyed people. And I even see photos. I even looked up, close up to the photos of a lot of these Samoans of high caste family, and I see the resemblance of blue eyes within their eyes. And that's the same for Maldives, right? Now I only got 4 minutes to make this right.
well respected amongst the Māori people. And it's like this guy jumps out with his weapon in front of the whole of this platoon.
So this
they
is
used
the
to call
Māori
the
guy, right?
Te Aroha flying column, and starts jumping around and displaying his weapon and doing his
That's the
dance.
video right there.
One of the guys starts loading up his musket and points at him, and Gilbert Mayer says, give the man a bit of credit, look what he's doing. And then as suddenly as he appeared, he disappears. It's just a couple of skips into the bush and he's gone. What is sort of interesting is that this guy was fair as white.
There you go.
But the other thing was fully facial tattoo, Māori tattoo. Also the legs, everything,
Yeah,
So the
look,
interesting
right
thing
here,
is,
blue eyes, just like
he's a very,
Samoans.
very tall white person brandishing
Blue
a Māori
eyes.
taiaha with a
And the
fully
pink blue
facial
eyes.
tattoo, which was only for the ones of high rank. People think everyone got tattoos in the old days. They're wrong.
No,
5
they're
to 10% at the most. You had to be something to deserve it, especially a
blue
facial
eyes.
tattoo.
And the whole point, right, if you look at the scale over here that I'm showing you, you see where all the ancestors of Polynesia came from. And even in science, it just shows the migration of races that came in here. But the only problem is that if you look at this map, the one thing they missed out was the ancestors of the Polynesian people. They came from the Americas and into Polynesia. And they populated a lot of the Polynesian areas and maybe skipped this area over here and into Indonesia. And here's all the types of evidence that you see. How the Egyptians are connected to the Americans are connected to Polynesia. Okay, like this symbol over here, the bird cult. So, and here's some more pictures. Now, you might look at these pictures and you go to yourself, European, right? Where are they found? Guess where? China. These photos that you see over here are people in China. And you'll find over here the Indo-European Bronze Age Central East Asia. So you'll find how you find these red hair people within China, right? The more I studied, the more I realized, it says over here, the particular significant place occupied by this culture were of Eurasian ancestry. So it kind of like shows how different the world is. This here, down in China. Over here, this is a drawing of a Buddhist or Asian in China. Why is it you see these red hair, light skin, blue eyes, right? And you'll find even within Egypt that the color of the ancient people, Ramses II, dyed his hair red. In ancient Greece, hair was more lighter by rinsing it and by rubbing it with yellow flower petals and pollen. You find the same within Polynesia. These practices, like when I read a lot of history about Samoa, I found that a lot of the maidens or high-rank nobles of the chiefs would dye their skin, try to make their skins lighter, try to make their hair lighter. And where did it all stem from, right? Where did it all come from? And if you look at Ramses and the facial features of Ramses, you actually see the ancestors of not just, like, you look at his features, red hair, whatever you like to call it. He was very tall, 7 feet tall, very tall man, Caucasian. He must have been with white skin. Egyptians, the Middle East people are well known for their knowledge of the stars and knowledge of bird. So, no doubt, and do not also forget, Egyptians were masters at navigation skills. And we all know that Maui was a master navigator, but I do not think that Maui traveled by boat all the way over to, into Polynesia. I feel like They took the route into Siberia. From there, they must have had the knowledge of building the boats and traveled into the Americas. And there, into California, and then into Polynesia.